Thank you. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the V&A Academy online taster lecture today, Jewellery More Than Adornment. My name is Jenny Phelan, and I am the manager of the courses programme here at the V&A. So we're really glad to have you here for this fascinating lecture led by Beatriz Chadour-Sampson. We've got a wonderful hour lined up for you. Beatriz is one of our top course leaders here at the V&A Academy. She is an international jewellery historian, author and lecturer. She was the consultant curator on our William and Judith Bollinger Jewellery Gallery and also co-curator of our Pearls exhibition here at the V&A. This summer, she is running a 12-week course for us. Very exciting on the history of jewellery, so please do take a look at that. It starts on the 29th of April and runs through to the 15th of July. It's fully online via Microsoft Teams, like this one, and it will be live lectures, but are also recorded similar to today, so you can watch back in your own time if you can't make the live sessions. Beatrice is also the course leader for our fully on-demand Pearls course, which you can sign up to on our website as well. And this is fully on demand, so you can watch it anytime, anywhere, and these links will be shared with you after the session today. So really quickly, I just want to take a couple of minutes to talk you through the Academy and some of the technical bits of today's session. I think there's a lot of people are joining us. I can see we have just over 200 attendees watching live right now, but I think over 800 people have signed up to watch this lecture, which is amazing. I hope you all enjoy. I'll keep this short and sweet. We're based here at the V&A in London, and it is at the world's leading museum of art, design and performance. The Academy in particular, we program the adult lifelong learning events and courses. So we're together with you here in our online environment, but we also run a series of events, both free and paid for, at the museum. So please do have a look at these on the V&A's website. We'd love to have you joining us again. Before we get going with this lecture today, I thought it'd be really nice for you to have a look and see if you can find the Q&A button on your screen. It should be 2 speech bubbles with a question mark inside. If you're on a laptop, it might be on the top of your screen. If you're watching on an iPad, you may need to touch your screen to make the toolbar pop up. But once you find the Q&A button, which is the place where you can ask questions to Beatrice during the lecture today, and they'll be answered at the end of the session, maybe type in now and let us know where you're joining us from, because there's so many of you watching. It would be lovely to know where in the world you are. So if you can find the Q&A button now, just before we get going, I can see some messages coming in already, which is great. Please do let us know where you are joining us from. So any questions that you're asking during the lecture, as I said, will be answered at the end of the session by Beatrice, and Amaya, our coordinator, will be handling those. Any questions as we go along, pop them in there. If you have anything that you want to ask after the lecture or you'd like more information, please do email us at courses@vam.ac.uk, and a member of the Academy team will get back to you as soon as possible. On that note, I'll hand over to Beatrice. I hope you enjoy this wonderful lecture, and thank you everyone for joining us this morning.
Thank you very much, Jenny. And for those who have joined my lectures before or will do, let me introduce you to my little assistant, Ruby, my little Chihuahua dog. She's very well versed in jewellery, but I think she has heard it all before and would like to retire. But she's very well versed in jewellery. But let us get on with the talk. Thank you so much for joining us, and certainly with such numbers. I hope you will enjoy the journey that I'll be taking you on. Now, we come from this beautiful slide to something quite different. When I was asked to do a talk about jewellery, a 1-hour one, I decided we talk about high-end jewellery, and it's all very decorative, and we have in the gallery a section called Cradle to Grave, and it gives you a story of what jewellery, why did we wear jewellery? Now you'll get terribly surprised. Why is she showing us pieces? Nothing to do with the V&A, but the Blombos Cave in South Africa, 75,000 BC. The reason is because shells were a symbol of fertility, and fertility was a hugely important part of jewellery. Procreation, creating a family, this was hugely important, and this goes back thousands and thousands of years through many cultures, and even today. Have a look. We've got a ring in the from Spain of 17th century shell, and an amulet here on the right, another shell, and even the pattern of the shell is against the evil eye. But most importantly, shells have always been associated with fertility, a hugely important, because we have to remember that family and early deaths were quite common. So we have the shell. But then let me show you. You think, well, she's jumping now to ancient Egypt. These are pieces that we have in the V&A and the British Museum. In ancient Egypt, it was very much about creating a family rather than the wedding. And here we have gods, and you'll soon find out why I'm showing you this. The hippopotamus goddess, the amulet for childbirth, and Best Jewel, also ancient Egypt, the deity for childbirth, and little cat was also an amulet in Egyptian times for childbirth. Well, look, so we have gods that help us and protect the mother. And here we have in Europe two pendants. And I have to say the Virgin Mary from the 13th century onward played a huge role in the iconography of art and jewelry. And here we have on the left a pendant with the Holy Family of St. Anne, the mother of the Virgin and the Christ child. These pendants were worn usually suspended on a belt in 15th century Germany, or else hung on rosaries. We'll talk about rosaries a bit later. And here in the 17th century, we have a place of pilgrimage with the Virgin of the Pillar in Saragossa, and the Virgin was very much a symbol of motherhood. Similarly, in many other cultures, there were deities for childbirth and mothers. Here we have a splendid, again, this would have been, this is a early 16th century pendant with the Virgin and Child, again, would have been worn on a belt or even attached to a rosary. And here we have a belt in the V&A with the mother, with the Virgin breastfeeding the Christ child. And a belt, well, I could fill a whole lecture about belts going back to the Stone Age, because belts, and even today in Africa and other cultures, you'll find that the belt is a symbol of fertility and not just a decorative accessory for a textile dress that you wear a belt. This is much deeper than that. And we have a relic of the Virgin's belt in Prato, in the Cathedral of Prato, which also is very much about mothers that went there and venerated the Virgin. And then you had jewels, like there are plenty more. I'm just showing you an example in the V&A. It's made of malachite and comes from Bavaria, 18th century. And this cross was held during child labor against pain and protection, for protection. So now when a child is born, where does jewelry play a role? Quite important. Here we have a silver bell amulet of the 18th century. You can find earlier examples, but I chose a V&A one. And it's interesting because it's cross-cultural, as I mentioned before. The Etruscans and the Romans, they had for the boys bulle with a rattle inside, and it was the same idea, to ward off the evil spirits. Not a baby phone as we have today. It really was to protect the child from the evil spirits. And here you have this wonderful Spanish portrait of the 17th century where this bell is worn on a belt, as well as many other amulets. Then you have a teething instrument here, but it also has the rattle. And here you have a portrait of Christina of Bavaria, 40 weeks old, and here she's holding a teething instrument. The wolf's tooth, you find different teeth, and these were very much not only as an instrument for teething, but also they had protective elements or give you strength. And then this exquisite example, they're very rare, of this child's amulet as a coral. If you look at children's portraits also in the 19th century, you'll find coral necklaces, and that goes back to the idea of coral being an amulet for children against illnesses of the blood, and also to be warding off evil spirits. Here we have a later example from the 19th century, and you'll find if you go through galleries and you see pictures of the Virgin and Child, you'll see that the Christ child is wearing a necklace with a coral amulet. So this is something that goes through centuries, so I can only give you a small flavor. But let's come to love and fidelity. This is one of the most favored of all jewels today and whenever during its history. Now you may think of hearts and cupids, but I'm going to show you something quite different. A Greek ring of the 2nd century BC with a pair of sandals. Now you wonder, why is she showing me a ring with sandals? Well, sandals are very much symbolic of the wedding night and consummation. And here in these, it would have been an erotic symbol and a good luck charm for fertility. But let's jump to the Romans. Why I'm going back a little bit in time. We have to remember that V&A does have some Roman jewelry, and it's mainly medieval till today, but there is some ancient jewelry as well. But this ring here, I'm showing you with the clasped hands, because for those who have not done my courses yet, you'll find out that the earliest wedding rings go back to the Roman times. They were really a promise of marriage rather than a wedding ring. And here we have a 2nd century, very fine cameo ring with this inscription unity. But this is charming. We think of these sort of things of 19th century. Well, you go back to the Roman times in the 2nd century, and here you have this beautiful ring, which says in the inscription, "Take this, sweetheart, for many years." Now, I said that the Romans were important, and they were more important as not only as the early wedding rings, but here we have the clasped hands, and you'll recognize that even in the 19th century and through the centuries, that you'll have these clasped hands, very much to do with the vow, handing the 2 right hands as a symbol of trust and fidelity. And it goes back to antiquity, the right hands, and as the goddess of trust, it's called a Fede ring, and it's the goddess of trust, Fides, that plays a role. And here we have this wonderful medieval ring, late medieval ring from the V&A, and on the other side of the ring you have these 2 hands clasping a heart. Now we come to religious scenes. What has that got to do with love and fidelity? Well, quite a lot. These iconographic rings were often patron saints that were depicted, or saints that helped you through life and illnesses, and they were almost like prayer beads. But I've chosen these 3 to show you because they all have to do with love. Here, the one on the left says "All for You" with the Annunciation, St. Christopher of Good Heart, and here again, with good heart. And gemstones, when do they play a role in the love symbolisms? Certainly by the 15th century you have, well, rubies, well, rubies very much the stone of love and associated with Venus. And here on the right, we know diamond engagement rings. Well, as far as we're aware, it goes back to about the 15th century, maybe a little bit earlier, but certainly by the 15th century. And you have this ring here in the British Museum saying, Lorenzo Alena. Well, that is a love declaration, isn't it? Ring brooches in the medieval period, they had multifunctions, anything from medical to religious but they also had a lot of love symbols in them. They were given also very often as a symbol of love, friendship, and here we have a wonderful example in the V&A with this beautiful wreath on the reverse, and on the front you have "All my love is yours" inscribed in French. Now you'll find that French in the medieval period and also later was a language of diplomacy and certainly spoken in higher levels of society. So French inscription does not mean it was made in France, but that you would learn if you come to the 12-week course. Here's another example in the V&A, a very much illustrated one. It's a ring brooch, but it's heart-shaped, and it says, this time the message is at the back, only known between giver and recipient, ourselves and all things at your whim. And this locket, little lock It's inscribed in French again, with all my heart. And this is the famous fishpool hoard of 1400, of the first half of the 15th century. Now, these two rings are really, you'd think, oh, these are signet rings, especially the one on the right with the coat of arms. But look very more closely. These are not simple signet rings showing your status. This is all about love. On the left, you have a turquoise. Turquoise, you'll find that through the centuries, it was the stone of friendship. And here we have a 16th century ring with the initials FDA, a heart, a winged heart. And the ring on the right, as I said, is a coat of arms, but no, it's all about love and marriage. 1634, jewelry historians love it when there's a date on there. It helps us date pieces. And here you have the date, probably, of the actual wedding and the initials of those to be wed in 1634. We talked about stones. You'll find from the 16th century onwards, if you look at portraits in galleries and many pieces of jewelry, diamonds and rubies now become very common. And the diamond is the symbol of virtue and constancy, and the ruby all about love. This is an exceptional example. You've got a little skeleton, and on the other side, a little baby. And this is very much a reminder of the vows of marriage, till death us do part. This example is in the Victoria and Albert Museum with a heart, a diamond, how much more? Constancy, love, permanent love, and hand held by hand. It comes from Germany. In this case, we have the German, it's the vows, which translated means my beginning and my end. What God has joined together, let no man put asunder. And a little dog. Well, what has that got to do when you first see a ring with a dog? Well, that is very much, if you see jewels with dogs, it's not just about your companion. It's a symbol of fidelity. You'll find also on tombstones a dog at the foot of the deceased. And here we have in this ring a Latin inscription, I shall be faithful unto death. This charming 19th century ring, you see how the fashion goes on through the centuries. In 1830, it's a dog as a symbol of fidelity and the roses of love, and inside you would have had a lock of hair. These charming rings, that's a nice gift, better than a postal envelope. A ring with a little envelope and a surprise message inside. Here on the left is about 1830, 1840. One says amour, love, and the other one is even more symbolic with a heart-shaped turquoise, remembering that turquoise is the stone of friendship. This is a very, very famous love jewel. That's why I'm showing it to you. But it has everything you can imagine to do with love in there. The diamond for constancy, the ruby for pearls, for love, pearls for chastity, and here you have the mistletoe for fertility and life, and this couple being married, and here in the garden of love. In medieval times, that's where you met your partners very often. And this decorative Cupid on the right, well, that says love. That's not difficult to understand. You've got the billing doves, of course, here, but this is our love arrow and Cupid. But this is a more complex jewel to understand. You've got a daisy in the front, and the daisy is all about innocence and modesty. And then you have parrots about prosperity. And billing doves, the heart, the hands, the diamond, well, this is all about love, but not immediately visible. This may be immediately visible, rubies, diamonds, as I've mentioned before, the heart-shaped ruby, but what you don't know is at the back, you open up this little compartment and you have a little miniature of your loved one, and this sits on your breast, on your chest. This little locket has a lot of language, the language of flowers, not only in the 19th century, certainly already very much in the 17th century and earlier. But we have tulips in the 17th century where they amounted to currency. They were extremely important. But here it's all about love. The tulip originally from Persia and then via Turkey, and in Persia the tulip was a symbol of true love. And here you have at the back a closed tulip and at the front the open one. So love is opened plus the diamonds. Beautiful necklace, inlaid hard stones from Florence, Pietradura, with these beautiful butterflies. Very charming, delicate necklace. Well, the butterfly is a symbol of perpetual love. It's not just decorative. And here we have the Ouroboros, is the snake biting its own tail. And as I said before, the turquoise of friendship. And of course, the snake biting its tail is symbolic of eternal love. Here we have this charming brooch. This is 19th century by then, very much the language of flowers. And here you have the convolvulus flowers, which symbolizes the bonds of love. And here studded with turquoise. You couldn't be more. It's beautiful. It is adornment, but it's a lot more. Charming brooch and earrings. You've got, well, what is all this about? Bird with a nest. Well, you've got the forget-me-nots. You've got the myrtle, which is a bridal symbol. The pearls probably symbolizing children, babies, or family that has been created. And this dove, this so very much, and the lock of hair at the back. Here we have birds again in the 19th century, 1860 in the archaeological style. But it's a lot more. It's the bridal symbol of the myrtle and the billing doves. Here, this is an enchanting piece, very, very small, but beautiful. It's the cockerel and the hen, made of pearls by a German Art Nouveau artist, jeweler, who made incredible pieces. But this is very, so it's a love token. And possibly has something to do with the proverb, the cock croweth and the hen delivereth the egg. Now we come to another major part of jewelry, is very much about faith and devotion. I'm talking mainly about the Christian faith, but we have this symbolism of faith in many cultures. You may wonder, gosh, these are rather boring rings. Well, boy fishing, young boy fishing, that is symbolic of Christ for the period when it was made. The cock is an attribute of St. Peter and a symbol of the Passion. These were early Christian rings when Christianity was becoming an official religion, but when you were wearing it at times, it would be highly dangerous, as it was, the Christians were being martyred. But these were symbols of your faith in a very, very early period. When we come to the late Roman period, early Christian era to early medieval, you start finding the sign of the cross because it was an official religion and you could openly wear your sign of your faith in different ways. The hero, an abbreviation of the symbol of Christ, here on an early Christian ring that was found in Suffolk. And here, an early Christian. This is a tiny bracelet. We have it in the cradle to grave. This was worn by a child as a protective element. Then we come to those that are maybe more commonly known to you. But interestingly, you have the signs of the Passion at the back, and you have the stones in the front, very decorative. And I'm going to come to the next one, because you've got the rubies are symbolic of the sacrificial blood of Christ. And the pearls are very much purity, a symbol of Christ. So you have, and these jewels, I get often asked, did a man or a woman wear it? Well, I found many portraits of men and women wearing it on the hat or around the neck. This reliquary cross in the V&A is quite well, it doesn't look that exciting from its beautiful beautiful craftsmanship. You've got the veil of Veronica here as Christ rather than the crucified Christ on there. But what is important is when you open, there's a hinge. There are compartments with very, very important relics. Obviously not seen to the eye from the front. You've got the Virgin's milk. You've got relics of the saints of Peter and Paul and fragments of the true cross. Fragments of the true cross, well, I always say the true cross must be quite large with the amount of relics that exist, but it was all about faith and what you believed in. Here we have V&A, which is reverse painted crystal, this beautiful crucified Christ, and at the back opening with the true cross and the symbols of the Passion. You know, this 1580 to 1620 about. And another V&A example is this rock crystal cross, which looks very decorative, and you have the cross in the middle, which is certainly would have been from the true cross, but you've got also inscriptions of the relics that were taken from the purple robe of the Lord and from the various apostles. Very decorative piece, certainly adornment, but a lot more to it. And children wore jewelry. I always have to remind the children wore jewelry what the adults wore. This only changes in the 20th century, but these are things that you would learn maybe if you wish to join in the course. But this is an exceptional rock crystal. Rock crystal was you have relics with reliquaries with rock crystal protective of the actual relic. And here we have the true cross again with the crown of thorns symbolically surrounding it. Now we come to England in the 1610 to 1620, and remember the Reformation and being a Catholic was quite a dangerous situation at many times through the history. And here we have a rather decorative one, but still it is a cross and a sign of faith. And they become ever more decorative in the 17th century, 18th century. You do find crosses with the crucified Christ, but they do tend to become more decorative, and inside you have relics, which are not visible. Talking about relics, I really do want to just show you one from the British Museum, stressing the point that if you see this pendant closed, oh, that's a nice amethyst pendant, but it isn't immediately clear the significance. You have to start opening it. When you start opening it, you see all different scenes from the life of Christ, and also the King Philip VI of France with his wife Jeanne de Bourgogne. And inside are very, very important. You open this area and you see inside a relic of the Holy Thorn of Christ's crown of thorns. So this is adornment, but look at what's inside and the meaning of this hugely important relic. And then if you went on travels, this is the problem is with PowerPoints, they're a bit large at times, but this is a small piece which you could hold in the palm of your hand. And this was a diptych. It opens up, and you have various scenes from the Annunciation, the birth, and the Virgin and Child, and the crucifixion. And this was a traveling altar. You had that very often in a pouch hanging on your belt or held in your hand or whatever. And when you were traveling and you wanted to pray, you would hold it like a little altarpiece. And you even have the prayer all along the side here. And very much about with Hail, Queen of Mercy, my Lord, my God, and it continues with the prayer. Then we have a pelican, very adorning. You find portraits, Renaissance portraits with these beautiful pendants, and the pelican fed her young ones with her blood. And it was a sacrificial meaning behind it, and symbolizes Christ on the cross to redeem the world's sins. Now, this is a very religious interpretation of it, but if we look now a little bit later to Queen Elizabeth I, she was one of the best queens for what public relations was. But here we have the so-called pelican portrait, and here is a jewel with a pelican, probably a ruby here, and feeding the young, pelican feeding its young with its blood it's drawn from its breast. But here it is, she is the mother of her country, and she's sacrificed her life for her country. So a rather political interpretation of a religious motif. The Lamb of God, quite but again, it's the sacrificial blood of Christ. You can see the chalice and the blood coming out. And this roe deer on the right is again 16th century, and it could be a symbol of Christ, but it also could be a symbol of love. So sometimes we can't interpret things completely. The trouble is with jewelry is that we never know the owners, or very, very rarely, and know what we can only hope to reconstruct what these meanings were. You also could wear your patron saint. This is a magnificent pendant in the V&A of St. Lambert. He was of Maastricht, but he was also a patron saint in many churches in Germany and Belgium. You can go to a place of pilgrimage, the Holy Shroud of Turin, many of you will know. Less known is the Shroud of Besançon, which is now deemed as not genuine, but you have this exquisite 17th century jewel in this French enameling, and the scene here, and here, of course, the Shroud of Turin here. So you'd have that. And I mentioned rosaries, and I think I just mentioned it very briefly because we don't realize that rosaries are very much, the goldsmith made it, and there were bead makers, and these were aids for praying, and they were also very ornamental jewels. As you can see here on this portrait, we'll be talking about pomanders in a moment, but do have a look. Remember, I told you diamonds and rubies, very much marriages. Looks almost as if she's had 4 marriages here. Well, I'll leave the interpretation to you. A very important rosary is the Langdale Rosary. It is in the V&A, not in the Jewellery Gallery. It's in the British Gallery, and it's a very rare survival of a Catholic rosary during the Reformation time, made in about 1500, and it's pure gold, which rosaries usually have beads, but not made of all gold. So if you do go to the V&A, I think it's a rather important piece to have a look at. Now, beliefs and superstitions. This is something the church didn't like because that was heretic, but they had to accept that humans have superstitions, and that went on for centuries, that the church had to accept the fact. Here, iconographic ring I mentioned before, it's like a prayer, but saints were hugely important. They were invoked against all kinds of illnesses. And here, St. Christopher, who carried Jesus over a very difficult river, he's very much this patron saint of traveling. And here we have another iconographic ring with various saints, St. Barbara and Christopher, 15th century these tend to be, and they protected the wearer against illness. Here we have, and inside the hoop you have "For My Life," or you have inside the hoop here a French inscription, "A Good Year," or you have magical inscriptions which we cannot always solve. These were often medical. Well, the 3 magi, Caspar, Melchior, and Balthasar, well, why am I showing you this under superstitions? They were protected the wearer wearing it against epilepsy and illnesses of the kidneys. The IHS is there are 2 in the V&A. One is in the Medieval and Renaissance galleries, and this one is in the Jewellery Gallery. And this is the Christ symbol of Christ, and you've got the Passion on the symbols on the back. These could have also been amulets, and they're very decorative at times, but you find them quite a lot. And my feeling is that they do have an amuletic function as Christ protecting. Now, this is a sensational piece for very many reasons. If you do jewelry history, you'll know it's not until very late, centuries later, that you set stones in closed settings. The closed settings are the normal things. You don't have open settings until very late on, 18th, 19th century. So this is a 1540 to 1560 pendant, and you'll see it's open at the back, which was completely not the norm at the time. And at the back you also have inscriptions against epilepsy. So the person who's wearing this has the magical properties of the stones on their chest, as well as the inscription. And look here, we have a painting of Jane Seymour. And where is she wearing a very similar pendant on the skin itself? So this was an extremely rare piece. But in case you had toothache, why don't you wear a ring in the 15th century, early 15th century, with a scorpion? It protected you against poisoning and toothache. And here we have a toadstone ring, which is actually a fossilized fish tooth. And this would also protect you against poisoning. And if you had ailments of the eye, well, there's an amulet for that, and you wore this with little crayfish eyes inside. Or you wore a dolphin bone, which is a fish's ear bone, against stomach problems or also eye problems. And then the pomander. This is there are 2 boards in the V&A, quite a selection, but I'm showing you a few from the museum in Cologne, because this one shows very clearly how the segments are open. And these pomanders came from the Middle East, came from in the medieval period, and continued on through the 14th, 15th, 16th century in its format, and continued later more as a cent case. But they were, so they came from the Middle East, probably through the Crusaders, pomander because of the apple shape, and they had inside these compartments some of the most vile smelling stuff. And they were considered to, all kinds of animal fats and so on, but they were considered to protect you against the plague. And you have here even ambergris. This is from the digestive system of the sperm whale, but it had helped you with headaches and epilepsy. This pomander would have had some other contents inside, which we don't know. And here you have a painting in the V&A, and you find many paintings that they're on the rosary. They were attached to the rosary. And Christoph von Leiming was a very important person who worked at the court of the Wittelsbach in Bavaria. But a lovely painting in the V&A. And then it becomes more scent. Not much you had in the way of dry cleaning, of course. So pleasant smell would have been quite welcome. But why is it a skull? Well, some things you have to be left to the imagination. But inside you had rosemary, you had cinnamon, the balm of brandy, primrose, and violets, so nice smells. Helped you. Wealth and status, that is something that is definitely hugely, that is something that probably is throughout the jewelry history. Even if you wear your shells or your bones and all kinds of things, the more important you may have been. But we can't prove everything, but we can in the Roman periods. The dowry of a woman in the Roman period was exceptionally important, and the husband's social status depended also on that. And pearls and emeralds, the more the merrier in the jewelry. Things changed, of course, after that. But I thought I'd show you a little bit of Roman jewelry. But of course, the Romans with the pearls and the emeralds, it's the big rocks, isn't it? Here we have a wonderful necklace in the V&A from the early 19th century with peridots and diamonds. Well, this is material value, very much like in the Roman times. But we also have a bishop's ring of William Whittlesby, Archbishop of Canterbury, and bishops received, when they were consecrated, this ceremonial ring. And the sapphire was important because it was a symbol of divine power. If you encountered somebody with this pendant badge of the Holy Inquisition, I think you'd be very careful, because they had incredible judicial powers. And here, this one of the 17th century, they were extremely powerful during that period. You know, the cross of St. Dominic, and then their symbols for repentance, mercy, and punishment. Very strict, Holy Inquisition. So beware if you found somebody wearing this one. Or else you're maybe one of the wealthiest men in Europe at the time. You'd have a ring cut in different cut stones with your effigy. This would have been extremely rare. And inside the hoop, truly this was the Son of God, certainly pointing to his powerful status. Cameos, here we have, we think they're very decorative, and they are, but they can be more than just decorative. They're a symbol of power, status. And here Isabella Clara Eugenia, she's showing the cameo of her father, Philip II. We have a cameo here just to give you an idea. And this is showing the continuity of the Habsburg dynasty and their powers. The Heneage jewel is a major piece in the gallery, the jewellery gallery at the V&A. This is, one could talk about it for quite a long time. Here she is very regal and like a Roman empress. And here you have the blue, very much enamel of her divine powers. Well, why has she got diamonds for constancy, rubies for love? This jewel was given to Sir Thomas Heneage. He was Privy Councillor and Chancellor at the time of the Spanish Armada, and he was given this as a sign of loyalty. Here she is symbolizing how she calmed the seas, the church through difficult times. But at the back, you open it up and you have this very youthful image of the Virgin Queen. And that was a slip up, wasn't it? But it was true. And so this jewel, there'll be plenty more on that, but quite a little hidden message. And here she is, her jewels, and it was very much, her jewels were very much talk a lot, certainly about virginity, power, and many more. A little pendant with a galleon shape, that is something that could be symbolic of you, because remember this in the 17th century, seafaring nations, it was very important, and it was also important trade at the time. So a little pendant like that could symbolize the seafaring trade and prosperity of the person wearing it. This is an exceptional, it looks not that exciting, but it is exciting for a jewelry historian. Simple gold chain, again with the IHS, which I do think has a protective element to it, and the initials of the owner at the back. Now these chains, anything like this, would have been melted down and made into new jewelry. But if you see these in the gallery, quite modest, but they were certainly a symbol of wealth, as you see from this wonderful portrait of Tom Ring in 1582, more or less the time of the making of these things. It was, wearing a pair of bracelets is, you'll learn also in jewelry thing, that you wore bracelets always in pairs, never a single one throughout centuries. And here, this is certainly a symbol of wealth. Signet rings is self-explanatory. But one has to remember that signet rings with your coat of arms, that was a position in society that you had. But you could also have rings made of bronze gilt, silver gilt, and here, this was gold. This was certainly a sign of your status. If you had a little bit more money, you might go for something more ornate. This would have had enamel. It's lost over the centuries. But this is a verre aglomisé, the reverse painted crystal, and with your coat of arms in this beautiful design. And you can go even further, just to show you how this is the coat of arms of an archduke, and here another very, very elaborate ring. So these would have been signet rings of people of very, very high status. And I'm showing you, this is a rare example in a collection. This, you may have noticed, I've shown quite a few pieces from the Alice and Louis Koch collection, of which I was about 35 years the curator of. But that's not what I'm mentioning here. It's a fisherman's ring. And this is a ring this is a tradition that continues since 1265. When a pope was enthroned, he received a so-called fisherman's ring. And then after the death, it was broken and disappeared. But this ring has survived from Pope Pius IX, who reigned from 1846 to 1878. And here's a picture of him. So a very rare survival of a fisherman's ring. Now we come to mourning and death. Rather macabre, but you have to see it in the time, in the 16th, 17th century. It was a reminder that death was inevitable, and you should have lead a moral and virtuous life. But what a beautiful way of expressing it. Look at this incredible jewelry. The Torre Abbey jewel, by the way, is in the V&A, but you have to go to the British galleries for it. And here you see how the skeleton is lying, and you have, through the resurrection of Christ, we shall be sanctified. So very much a reminder of Christ's sacrifice. And here we have a mourning ring, or memento mori. Well, a mourning ring, but it also is behold the end, rather death than false faith. So it's really more a memento mori, reminding you of the inevitability of death. This is an amazing piece, the personification of death, a jewel in the Rijksmuseum. This is in the Cologne Museum, a rather unusual skull, the crown and the cupid with love. But when you open the skull, there's a little scene of the birth of Christ. So this is still open to interpretation, what the meaning is behind this 16th century pendant with the skull. This piece in the V&A is full of symbolism. It's very decorative. You've got this wreath, but if you look very, very closely, you've got a coffin, forget-me-nots, an anchor, the skull, a lock, entwined hearts, and knot that cannot be opened, and 3 in German stands for drei, which means treu. It's a German pendant, so amazingly full of symbols, not immediately visible what it is. This ring was a recent acquisition to the Rijksmuseum, or a few years now. Exceptional, with the open book, and in Dutch it says, "For me to live is Christ, and to die is gain." And inside the hoop, our life on earth is a shadow. We've got the skull and the angel. And of course you have hidden symbols. You've got the skull. Here's a memento mori ring, or it's really a memorial ring for Charles I, who was beheaded in 1649. But unbeknown to when you're wearing it, because that would have been politically very dangerous, you've got the glory of England has departed, but it's hidden away inside the hoop, and you swivel it around, so you can hide your affiliation to Charles I. Same thing with the Helia jewel, beautiful emerald from the front, but at the back you have the hidden symbolism, not the hidden flowers, but the hidden head of Charles I, his effigy. And this ring is also full of it's the hair of the family who were guillotined, the French royal family. King Louis XVI, Queen Marie Antoinette, their son Louis XVII, and King Louis's sister, Madame Elizabeth. When they were imprisoned, their physician who was there were given these locks of hair. And later, in about 1815, this ring was made, and it says the names of those who were glorified through the hair as a reminder of what they went through. Princess Charlotte was an incredibly popular. I don't like making comparisons with modern day, but a little bit like Princess Diana, a celebrity, and she was the only daughter of the later King George IV, and she died during childbirth, and she was very much a sign of hope for the royal family, and her death was glorified in many ways. And this is an exquisite pendant with a hair in the shape of the Prince of Wales symbol. And here, those without names, but we have initials, we have the exact date, you have the memorial slide, which was worn probably on a velvet band around your neck. And here the skull and the winged hourglass, and the skull here, hair embroidered and hair at the back. And here a mourning ring. I cherish even her shadow. These were very popular in the late 18th century, silhouettes. And a rebus ring, a play on words, du bien aimé, belonging to the beloved, a late 18th century ring. And here in gold locket, again, eternal love with the snake biting its tail. And this rose with the inscription, "The rose withers, the butterfly flies away, napped it fell to the ground." Very poignant is this ring, very sad. You see the white roses and nipped in the bud. And it's a ring that belonged to a mother, also it was a child, the white enamel. And it was aged 2 years, 9 months, and 14 days, as we know. Very sad, but a beautiful ring. Here we have again, children's death was very common. But here we have fond at the back engraved, fond parents grieve not for their infant son. Your God has called him and his will be done. And this beautiful wax relief and pearls add a multifunction of purity and love, but also mourning. And this is an amazing ring. There are 3 views of it. And you have, it mourns 7 children, aged 1 week to 16 years old. It's very likely that an illness like scarlet fever wiped out the whole family. And this butterfly brooch, very decorative looking with the hair, but it really has the 8 initials of 8 deceased members of a family. And then to end the talk, we have the white rose, mourning brooch in the V&A, a traditional symbol of death, but a very beautiful brooch. So a beautiful piece, adorning, but it has a lot more meaning behind it. And to end the talk, thank you very much for your patience. I hope I've proven that jewelry is more than adornment. It symbolizes moments of life. And if you want to learn more, maybe you'll join me on the course, the 12-week course, jewelry course, or the on-demand course, Pearls. I did give a little pointer that pearls have a lot of many meanings. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Beatriz, for your lecture today and for sharing all of the highlights of these wonderful pieces. We've got a couple of questions which have come through already. So let me start off with Barbara. She asks, how were the complex pieces with many symbols designed? Did the customer request all of the components, or did a designer create a piece and then sell it?
Well, I think I covered anything from basically the Roman times, forget the shells of 75,000. But they were also designed, by the way, they had red ink on them, ochre. I don't think one can generalize it. I think that pieces would have been commissioned and some pieces would have been made. Certainly commissions were made, like the Marie Antoinette ring or the fish. There are many pieces that would have been commissioned, but I don't think one can generalize that. I think as today you can commission a piece or you buy a ready-made piece. Jewelers had probably offered designs, or very likely that they made in the sort of 15th, 16th century or later, that they made drawings and discussed it, or you know, that I don't think one can generalize that. I'm not being too helpful, I think, with the answer.
Thank you. Thanks so much for that. We've got another couple of questions coming through. There's one. Why does the belt represent fertility? You had an earlier piece. Are Victorian buckle rings also symbols of fertility?
Well, I've actually written an article together with the Swiss National Museum about the Stone Age, and even there the belts play. It's a fascinating topic, and once was said one could make a whole exhibition about it. The belt is worn across the womb. We see it today as something that holds the textile, but if you it's something that protected the womb. So it's very much a symbol of fertility. And in actual fact, it's, as I heard, in African culture today, even when a girl is born, you have something laid over the belly, or so to speak, and that is unknown, but that is really a fertility symbol. And you have that through many centuries, and it's the positioning of it, and it wasn't about a functional. It didn't have a functional purpose. It didn't have the functional purpose of holding the garment as we know it today, or in the medieval period, the belts also held garments.
Right, thank you.
It's something that goes throughout the jewelry history. Sorry,
we've got a couple of more questions. One is, what is the fish pool hoard, please? Also related.
Oh, that was found near Nottingham. If you go to the British Museum, you'll find a display of the fish pool hoard. There's various rings and lockets and more pieces. But also, if you are interested to know more about it, simply use the website, British Museum Online Collection, and type in Fishbowl Hoard, and you'll see all the objects that were found there. It's a 15th century hoard, a very interesting one, and various pieces of jewellery. In fact, the heart-shaped pendant that I showed you from the V&A, there's one that belonged to the Fishbowl Hoard with a lot of enamel on it, but I wouldn't show it here. If I do the course, then I show you how the one in the V&A might have looked like. Just look on the British Museum Collection website, Fishbowl Hoard, and you'll be delighted to see the pieces.
Perfect. That leads us also to another question. One joiner has asked, please let us know which museum you consider have the most complete jewellery collection, at least in Europe or the UK. And before you kindly reply to that, may I also say in the courses, that's the signposting and exchanging with other enthusiasts and knowledgeable experts. That is also part of the online course, to just kind of share the wealth of information there. So
yes, and if you are interested, I mean, if you live, I don't know where you're living, but London is one of the, for various reasons, you've got the archaeological jewellery and basically, I mean, you can't sort of, you've got archaeological jewellery in the British Museum, but you also have a sensational collection of 19th century jewellery in the British Museum. The V&A is an incredible study collection which covers anything from Etruscan Greek a little bit, but medieval to today. It's very important. But in Europe, I've worked on the Museum of Decorative Arts in Cologne many years ago, and recently again. And that has in Germany probably the most comprehensive collection of jewellery, covering many 7,000 years of jewellery. But there are always pockets of important, like if you want Art Nouveau jewellery, it's the Musée des Arts Décoratifs Paris. But if you do the, please, I'm not saying you should or what, but if you do the course, you'll be informed about various collections. And in my course, I always use pieces from museums around the world because I think it's so important. As were also in this talk, there were quite a few museums there tucked away.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And also thank you on behalf of the audience. We have reached our hour. I've run into small little technical problems. I can't post all your questions which have come in, but be assured if you also join one of our online courses, you have routes for our Q&A channel, so even if you watch on demand. So for now, thank you so much for joining us today. You will receive the lecture recording roughly a day after via the email you signed up. So please look out. Just under the lecture recording, you find all sorts of little links signposted, what you might be also interested in. I would have posted all the links Jenny has mentioned.
I forgot.
You can
Please
also
forgive me.
you can also scan the code as alternatively, but otherwise look out for the viewing link which you will receive and to enjoy for a limited time whenever it suits you best. So thank you so much on behalf of the audience for today, Beatrice, and we hope to see you soon. So thank you. I'll close the session now. Thank you.